It all started when I found a video that made my stomach twist into knots. I had been sitting at my desk, just scrolling through the latest news, when I stumbled upon an article about a new invention that was supposedly the next big thing. The headline grabbed me immediately. Stepbrother of local inventor revolutionizes tech world with groundbreaking device. My heart skipped a beat. I clicked on the link, not believing what I was reading. The video showed my stepbrother, Marcus, standing confidently in front of a crowd, talking about how he had come up with the design, the concept, and the entire idea that was now about to change everything. He didn't just say he'd been a part of it. He made it sound like he was the mastermind behind it all. The more I watched, the more my disbelief turned into a tight knot of anger. I could barely focus on the rest of the video. I knew I had been the one who had put in all the hours, the late nights, the struggle to get this invention off the ground. I had poured my heart and soul into it, and Marcus had been nowhere to be found. Not once had he asked about my progress or offered any help. He'd only ever been around when the spotlight was shining, hanging out, enjoying the benefits of what I had built, but never lifting a finger to support the effort. How could he stand there, in front of everyone, claiming it as his own? I immediately thought of the months I spent in my garage, toying with wires and components, experimenting with prototypes that didn't work, only to finally get it right. I had worked for this. I had earned it. I couldn't let it go. I had to confront him. I remember calling him that evening, my voice shaking even though I tried to keep it steady. "Marcus, what's going on? Why are you claiming my work as yours?" He was dismissive, brushing it off like it was no big deal. "Relax, Willow, it's all part of the process. You know how these things work. You were always so caught up in your little projects. I'm just making it happen." His words stung like venom. "Making it happen?" I echoed, barely able to believe what I was hearing. "You didn't do anything. I've been doing all the work for months. You've just been taking credit and sitting back while I did the hard part." He laughed it off. "You're overreacting. It's just business, relax. Everyone knows I'm the one pushing this forward." He hung up before I could say anything else. That was it. The moment I realized how deep his lies ran. It wasn't just the video that set me off. It was everything that followed. Over the next few days, I started digging into the history of the invention, trying to piece together the timeline. I found emails I had sent months ago, drafts of the designs, conversations with my team, and even a few receipts for parts I had bought. All of it pointed back to me. I had been the one to set everything in motion. But as I dug deeper, I found something even more disturbing. Marcus had been in contact with investors, claiming that he was the original inventor. Worse, he had convinced a few key people that I was just his assistant. The truth was slowly coming to light, and I realized just how far he had gone to manipulate everyone. It was one thing to steal credit for my work, but now he was trying to erase me from the story entirely. I knew I couldn't let this slide. I had to expose him for what he was doing. I wasn't about to sit back and let him destroy everything I had worked so hard for. I started gathering all the evidence. I pulled up the old design files, the notes I'd kept, and even the timestamps on my computer that showed the exact moment I had created the first working prototype. I was meticulous in organizing everything, and then I reached out to the investors he had been talking to. I emailed them the truth, sending over every document, every email, every little piece of evidence that proved I was the real inventor. At the same time, I made sure to send the same email to a few key members of the press who had been covering the invention's launch. This wasn't just a family issue anymore. It had become a matter of public trust. I wasn't going to let him get away with it. When Marcus found out, he was furious. He tried to deny everything, claiming that I was making it all up, that I was just bitter because he was getting the attention he deserved. But his lies were crumbling and the walls were closing in. He started reaching out to me, begging me to stop. He sent text after text, trying to convince me that it wasn't a big deal, that I should just let it go. "Willow, please, you're ruining everything. Think about what's at stake here." But I wasn't interested in what he had to say anymore. I was done letting him take credit for my work. His threats, his manipulation, none of it worked. I was going to make sure the world knew the truth, and nothing he said would change that. Finally, the truth came out. The investors pulled their support from him and the press started to cover the real story. It wasn't long before everyone knew who the true inventor was. The humiliation he felt when his lies were exposed was something I couldn't take my eyes off of. He tried to salvage his reputation, but it was too late. The damage had been done. My invention was now rightfully mine in the eyes of the world. As for Marcus, his lies had caught up with him in the worst way possible. No one wanted to do business with a liar. It wasn't the public revenge I had expected, but it was enough. He had gotten exactly what he deserved. The fallout from everything that had happened didn't stop with Marcus. Once the truth was out, it felt like a chain reaction had begun. People in my life, friends and family who had once supported me, suddenly turned their backs. They didn't want to pick sides, or worse, they blamed me for causing a rift in the family. My parents especially were livid. They had always been more inclined to defend Marcus, and when they found out that I was the one who had exposed him, they tried to guilt-trip me into backing down. "You've ruined your brother," my mother said, her voice trembling with anger. "This is a family matter, Willow. Can't you just let it go?" But I couldn't. Not anymore. The damage Marcus had done wasn't just about the invention. It was about everything he'd taken from me. My reputation, my hard work, my trust in the people I called family. I wasn't going to let him just walk away from it all without facing the consequences. Then came the most unexpected part of the whole ordeal: Marcus's desperate attempts to manipulate me even further. He started sending me messages, pleading for forgiveness, promising he'd make it up to me. His tone shifted from defensive to remorseful, trying to play on my sympathy. "I never meant to hurt you," he would say. "I just didn't know how to do this on my own. Please, Willow, let's fix this. We can work together. We can be a team." But his words meant nothing to me now. They were empty. I saw through them all too clearly. It was all just another attempt to get what he wanted, to worm his way back into my life, without truly owning up to his actions. The damage was done, and I wasn't going to be fooled by him again. I stopped responding to his texts, deleted his messages, and made it clear to everyone around me that I wasn't going to back down. It wasn't just the emotional manipulation that bothered me. It was the way Marcus kept trying to control the narrative. He tried to spin the whole situation, telling people that I was being unfair and that I was making a mountain out of a molehill. He even had the audacity to say that I was jealous of his success. Every time I heard him twist the truth, I felt a deeper sense of determination. I had to keep exposing him. There was no room for compromise. The people who believed him were the ones who didn't understand the years I had spent working on my invention. They didn't know the sacrifices I had made to make it happen. And Marcus, well, he didn't care about any of that. To him, it was all just a game. He thought he could play me, that he could take my work, my success, and turn it into his own. But I wouldn't let him. I couldn't. Things started to spiral for him as more and more people saw through his act. The investors pulled back, and his so-called business partners distanced themselves. No one wanted to associate with someone who had been exposed as a fraud. I knew Marcus was struggling. His career, the one he had tried to build off my hard work, was crashing down. But part of me felt indifferent. I didn't pity him. He had chosen his path, and now he had to face the consequences. The more I thought about everything, the clearer it became that this was bigger than just an invention or a business deal. This was about integrity, about standing up for what was right. Marcus had crossed a line, and I wasn't about to let him slide by without paying for it. I thought about how many times I had let him get away with things in the past. As a kid, I had always taken the high road, letting him get the glory while I stayed in the background, hoping he would recognize my worth. But now, I saw that he would never change. He didn't care about me or anyone else, not unless it benefited him. The realization hit me hard. I had spent years trying to fit into a family dynamic that didn't value me. It wasn't just the invention. It was everything that came with it. Marcus had never seen me as an equal. To him, I was just a stepping stone, a way to get ahead. Now, I had to take control of my own narrative. The more time passed, the more I realized that I didn't need his approval or anyone else's. I was going to move forward on my own, with or without their support. The invention was mine, and that's what mattered. As I reflected on everything that had happened, I felt a sense of clarity I hadn't had before. Marcus might have stolen credit for my work, but he could never take the pride I felt in what I had created. I had built something from the ground up, and that was something he could never replicate. The lesson I learned was simple. When you let people take advantage of you, they will. But if you fight back, if you stand up for what's yours, you'll come out stronger on the other side. And in the end, that's exactly what I did. I stood my ground, I exposed the truth, and I reclaimed what was rightfully mine. The world knew who the real inventor was, and it wasn't Marcus. As the dust began to settle, I thought the hardest part was over. I had exposed Marcus for the fraud he was, and now everyone knew the truth. But that didn't mean everything was peaceful. In fact, things only got worse. The tension in the family was unbearable. My parents, unable to cope with the fact that their son had been caught in a lie, started pushing me to fix things. "You can't just leave it like this, Willow," my mother would say over the phone. "Marcus is your brother. You've got to find a way to make things right." But there was no making things right. How could I make peace with someone who had stolen my future, my hard work, and my dignity? Every time they asked me to forgive him, it felt like they were asking me to erase everything I had worked for, everything I had proven. They didn't understand that my fight wasn't just about family, it was about me, standing up for myself for the first time in my life. Marcus, meanwhile, wasn't done. I started getting strange messages from him, messages that were harder to ignore. At first, they were just apologies, too little, too late. "I'm sorry," he'd say. "I was wrong. I made a huge mistake. I'll do whatever it takes to make it up to you." But these messages felt hollow. I knew him too well. His apologies were just another attempt to manipulate me, to get me to undo everything I had fought for. And then, as his career continued to crumble, the messages changed. The tone became more desperate, even threatening. "You're making a huge mistake, Willow. You think you're winning, but you're just ruining everything. You're going to regret this," he warned. It was clear now. He wasn't just angry. He was scared. He had been exposed, and there was no way to put the pieces back together. The truth was, Marcus had underestimated me. He thought I would just sit back and let him take my credit, thinking I'd always let him win because he was family. He didn't realize that I wasn't the same Willow I had been a few years ago. I wasn't the quiet one who took a back seat to his charm and manipulation. I was someone who had been pushed to the edge, and now I was standing up for myself in a way I never had before. I wasn't going to let him, or anyone else, take away what was rightfully mine. But the worst part of all this was the damage Marcus caused to my personal life. People I had known for years began to question me. Some of them, the ones I thought I could trust, were now spreading rumors about me, painting me as the villain in the story. They said I was selfish, that I was hurting my family for nothing, that I should just move on and forgive Marcus. They didn't understand. How could they? How could they see it from my perspective when they didn't know what it felt like to have everything you've worked for stolen from you? The harder I fought for the truth, the more isolated I felt. It was like I was losing everything: my family, my reputation, and my peace of mind. But as I lay awake at night, replaying everything that had happened, I realized something important. I didn't need their approval. I didn't need their forgiveness. What I needed was to stay true to myself, to keep pushing forward, and to let the truth speak for itself. And then, just when I thought things couldn't get any worse, I found out that Marcus had taken his lies to a new level. He had been contacting my business partners, trying to convince them that I was unreliable, that I had taken credit for his work, and that I wasn't someone they should trust. His lies had extended beyond just our family. It was now affecting my career, my reputation in the industry I had worked so hard to build. My heart sank when I got the first email from one of my partners, asking if there was any truth to the rumors Marcus had been spreading. I felt a mix of anger and frustration, but also a sense of determination. I couldn't let him destroy everything. I quickly gathered all the proof I needed: emails, patents, designs, even photos of me working on the prototype, and sent it out to every partner, every person Marcus had tried to turn against me. The evidence was clear. Marcus had lied to them just like he had lied to me. It was at that point that I realized something crucial. I wasn't just fighting for recognition anymore. I was fighting for my future, for everything I had built. This wasn't just about family drama. It was about protecting everything I had worked for. Marcus had taken my trust, my hard work, and tried to use it to destroy me. But I wasn't going to let him win. I had made it this far on my own, and now it was time for me to take full control of my story. The confrontation that followed was inevitable. My family, seeing that Marcus's lies were unraveling, started to distance themselves from him. It was clear to everyone that he had crossed a line, but by the time they finally saw the truth, it was too late. Marcus had already destroyed his reputation in the industry. He had already lost the trust of everyone who mattered. It wasn't a victory I had expected, but it was the only one I could have. I didn't feel victorious when it was all over. I didn't feel like I had won in the way I thought I would. Instead, I felt a quiet sense of relief, knowing that I had done what was necessary to protect my work and my future. Marcus had gotten what he deserved, but at what cost? In the end, it wasn't about the invention or the recognition. It was about standing up for myself, proving that I would never let anyone take advantage of me again. As time went on, things slowly started to settle, but the aftermath of everything was still weighing heavily on me. The wounds that had been inflicted weren't easily healed, and I found myself questioning my place within the family. Even though the truth had been exposed, and Marcus had faced the consequences of his actions, I couldn't shake off the feeling of betrayal. I had always been the quiet one in the family, the one who did everything by the book, who played by the rules and avoided conflict. But Marcus had changed all of that. His lies, his manipulations, and his blatant disregard for everything I had worked for had pushed me into a corner where I had no choice but to fight back. And yet, even now, I couldn't escape the nagging feeling that the family I had always tried so hard to please would never truly understand why I had to do it. My parents still tried to get me to make amends with Marcus. They were in damage control mode, desperate to repair the rift that had formed in our family. "Willow, please," my mother would say when we spoke on the phone. "It's not too late to forgive him. He's your brother. We're a family. This isn't how we should be handling things." But every time I heard her say that, I felt the weight of everything I had endured. She didn't understand. She couldn't. She hadn't been the one to pour her heart into something only to have it stolen and twisted by someone she trusted. She hadn't been the one to watch as her hard work was erased and replaced with someone else's lies. I was done trying to explain it to them. They could keep trying to fix Marcus, but I wasn't going to let my life revolve around their idea of what family was supposed to be. I had built something on my own, and I wasn't going to let anyone, least of all Marcus, take that from me. For the first time in my life, I felt free. Not because everything was perfect, but because I had taken control of my own narrative. It wasn't just about the invention anymore, it was about me. I had fought for myself, for my work, for my future, and I had won. I had finally realized that no one else was going to protect me if I didn't protect myself. And that was a powerful thing to understand. Marcus, on the other hand, continued to spiral. His career was in ruins, and his reputation was irreparably damaged. The lies he had told were too deeply embedded, and even his old friends and colleagues couldn't stand by him anymore. It was almost sad to watch. He tried to make it look like everything was fine, putting up a front on social media, trying to save face in front of anyone who would listen. But behind closed doors, it was a different story. I heard from a few mutual acquaintances that he was struggling to find any meaningful work, that his business contacts had all dried up, and that the investors who had once believed in him were now looking elsewhere. His own lies had trapped him in a corner, and there was no way out. Still, I couldn't help but feel a sense of satisfaction in knowing that he had finally paid the price for what he had done. I wasn't proud of the situation. No one ever wants to see a family member fail or fall. But I knew that this was the only way for me to move forward. The truth had set me free, but it had also locked him into a reality he couldn't escape. I had learned that sometimes people like Marcus have to face the consequences of their actions, and as painful as it was, that was the only way to move on. But as I reflected on everything, I also began to realize something else. The whole ordeal with Marcus had taught me something important about myself, that I was stronger than I had ever given myself credit for. I had spent years living in the shadow of others, trying to please them, trying to fit into their mold. I had allowed Marcus, and even my parents, to define my worth for me. But now, I knew better. I was no longer the person who would shrink into the background. I was the one who had created something extraordinary, and I wasn't going to let anyone, not even my own family, take that from me. In the weeks that followed, I took the time to focus on my invention and my future. I decided to take it to the next level, to turn it into something that could make a real impact in the world. It wasn't about proving anything to anyone anymore. It was about doing something for myself, something that reflected the person I had become. And slowly but surely, the hard work began to pay off. New opportunities came my way. People started reaching out, interested in collaborating or investing. It felt good to know that the world was starting to recognize my potential, not because of my family or my connections, but because of what I had built with my own hands. Marcus, on the other hand, became more of a distant memory. I'd learned to let go of the anger and frustration that had once consumed me. The drama and the hurt had faded, and I found myself focusing on the future rather than dwelling on the past. There were days when I thought about what had happened, but it no longer controlled me. It was just another chapter in my story, and now I was ready to write the next one. The final thing I realized through all of this was that sometimes letting go of toxic people and situations is the best thing you can do for yourself. The family I had tried so hard to please had shown me time and time again that their version of love came with strings attached. But I had found my own path now. I had built something on my own, and I was proud of it. No one could take that from me, and no matter what happened, I would always be the one who had the courage to stand up and fight for what was mine. As the months went by, my life slowly started to return to a new sense of normalcy, though it was nothing like before. I had gained so much clarity throughout the entire ordeal, and I had come to terms with the fact that the family I once thought I could count on wasn't really my support system. They were just as flawed, just as human, and their expectations of me were as heavy as ever. But I wasn't going to be weighed down by them anymore. I had learned that I was stronger than I had ever realized. The work I had put into my invention wasn't just about creating something functional. It was about creating a life I could be proud of. Something that was mine, and something that no one could take away from me again. The sense of independence I gained after all of this was priceless. I didn't need Marcus or my parents to validate my success anymore. The truth was, I didn't need anyone's approval to know that what I had done was right. I had built my success from the ground up, and now I was taking it to places I had never imagined. My invention became something bigger than I had ever intended. I secured partnerships with companies that shared my vision, and soon, the idea I had worked on in my small garage was being brought to life on a larger scale. What I had started as a personal project became a venture with real potential, and it felt good knowing that it was all my doing. There were still moments when I thought about Marcus, but it wasn't out of anger anymore. It was more like a passing thought. He had made his choices, and I had made mine. The family that had once seemed so important to me, the family I had fought so hard to fit in with, was now a distant memory. I didn't need their constant approval or their toxic expectations. I was living my truth now. I had learned to trust myself, to believe in my abilities, and to never let anyone make me feel small again. By the time everything had settled, I had become someone entirely different from the person I had been when this all started. I wasn't the naive girl who allowed herself to be overlooked, and I certainly wasn't the person who let someone else take credit for her hard work. I was a woman who had fought for her place, who had demanded respect, and who had proven that she deserved it. And in the end, I had come out stronger, more confident, and more self-assured than I had ever been before. I remember the last conversation I had with my parents about Marcus. They called me up one day, asking me if I was ready to put the past behind me. "We don't want this to come between us, Willow," my father had said, his voice filled with concern. "You're our daughter. Family should come first." But I knew better now. Family didn't just mean blood. It meant respect, trust, and understanding. And Marcus had taken all of that and thrown it away. I wasn't going to be the person who always cleaned up the messes they created, who was expected to forgive and forget without any accountability. I had done my part. I had told the truth and I had fought for what was right. Now it was time for me to move forward with my own life, without looking back. It wasn't an easy decision to make, but it was the right one. In the end, the person I had to answer to was myself. I had taken back control of my life, and that was more than I could have asked for. No one could take credit for my work anymore. No one could undermine what I had built. My invention was a symbol of everything I had gone through, everything I had learned, and everything I had become. It was mine, completely, undeniably, and forever. Looking back, I realized that this journey wasn't just about exposing Marcus. It was about finding my own voice and standing up for myself. It was about reclaiming my power and not letting anyone, not even family, strip me of what I had earned. I had faced the truth. I had fought back, and I had emerged victorious. And now, with all the lessons I had learned, I was ready to build an even brighter future. The story wasn't just about an invention. It was about reclaiming my life, my worth, and my place in the world. And for the first time in a long time, I felt at peace with it all.